Welcome. This is embarrassing. Bro, I am so embarrassed right now. My name is Corey Yen. Why do I have to say my full name? Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Corey, and today I do want to talk a bit about a milestone that means a lot to me. For people who have been subscribed to my channel, which not many of you, I've been documenting my transition journey ever since I started my medical transition back on October 29, 2024, month by month until now. For about 8 months or so, I decided to document my growth, document all my changes publicly. And I did so because I think at the time I really wanted to find a community, and at a place where I was in at the time, I wasn't really able to find a community that I was able to express myself fully, and so I kind of turned into creating content myself. And although I felt really nice being able to put content out there that a lot of people were able to relate, after a year I decided to make those videos private. But now that I am a year and a half on testosterone, I decided to come back here, and I decided this time that I do want to make this video public. And I think what really pushed me to make this video is because I realized a lot of time being able to be authentically myself also means to really not care about how the public will view me. And I do think that being able to put content out there is a step for me to grow. So in this video, I do want to touch on 3 main points. I do want to touch on my physical changes, my mental changes, and I do think the most important of all, my growth journey in the past year and a half as a transgender man. So onto the physical side, I think that's pretty obvious. My voice has changed quite a lot. For people who stumbled upon my YouTube, my video or this video, I'm pretty sure you've watched all of the other transgender individuals or content creators talking about their own physical changes, and honestly there's not that many difference that I've experienced that they haven't experienced. I think I'm pretty much the same as any other trans guys out there. So obviously my voice dropped, my hair started to grow in places that they've never grown before, my eyebrows thickened, my physique changed because of redistribution. All of the usual changes came in. I remember being extremely impatient for the first year because, as any other transgender person, you are very desperate to see the changes very fast. And I think obviously I couldn't rush my changes. I actually started on a very low dose, so I started microdosing at first for the first 3 to 4 months until I eventually moved up to quote-unquote a normal dose. And the reason why I did so is because I really wanted to prep my body so that my body can go through this transition more smoothly. I didn't want to inject myself with the quote-unquote normal dose of testosterone right ahead because I think there were many factors other than just preparing my body. It was also just for me to mentally transition. That was not meant as a joke. I was preparing my own mind to also transition because I've never injected myself, and I think the thought of injecting myself with hormone is something that I mentally was very afraid of at the time, and I didn't know if that was something that I could see myself doing. And so I really wanted to go slow and ease into my transition journey once I feel ready. I just felt no rush. I felt no need to rush in this whole journey because I knew that this entire journey was going to be lifelong anyway, and so maybe slowing down in the beginning wouldn't make that much of a difference at the end of the day. Let me think about any other physical changes. One thing that I did hope for the best was that I would grow a little bit in height. I started back when I was 19, and I was a late bloomer. I didn't get my growth spurt until I was maybe 15 or 16. And so I really did think that I would have a chance to grow a little bit taller. I did grow a little bit by 1 inch, but I was really hoping I would grow more. But unfortunately, being 19, I knew that my chances are slim, and it was. But it's not that the end of the world. I think I'm already blessed genetically being considered tall before I transitioned. So height-wise, it's not something that was extremely dysphoric to me, which obviously I'm very blessed to say that. For anyone who is maybe wondering, I'm around 5'8". So I do think it's a height that as an Asian male, it's pretty average actually. The average height worldwide for men is 5'8". It just it just happens that I live in North America, and so the men of my age surrounding me are usually taller than that. But beggars can't be choosers. So mentally, I think for very obvious reasons, my dysphoria basically maybe disappeared maybe 90%. I think for me, dysphoria, I had two components. One was physical and one was social. Before you have all of those physical changes, it's really hard for you to socialize in a way that you want to be socialized, because socializing is always a two-way thing. You can't expect other people to treat you the same way if they don't see you the same way as you want to be seen. So unfortunately, it's one of those things that I think when you're preteen, it's just really, really hard to socialize in a way that you can feel completely authentic and comfortable. And that was exactly my experience. I think before I went onto this journey, I was very socially isolated by choice, because I knew that even if I tried to socialize, I wouldn't be getting the same treatment that I would want to be treated, that I would wanted. So why should I even try? And that's honestly kind of sad now that I look back at it, because I realized how, in a sense, socially stunted I was, because I've isolated myself in a way that really prevented me from networking and making all of these connections. I am again very blessed. I am so blessed, because I mean, height was already something that I like, genetically I won the lottery for, but also just when it comes to chest dysphoria, I think luckily for me, I've always had a extremely small chest. So dysphoria wise, I did not really have any chest dysphoria. I think most of my dysphoria, to be completely honest, was just the social part. It was mainly just I want to be seen, I want to be treated, I want to be recognized as a guy. And I think for that to happen, obviously physically, you have to look a certain way. And I think at this point of my life, if you see me down the street, you would be called stupid if you thought that I was a girl. So at this point of my life, I'm pretty happy, pretty content. And I think one thing that's very sad, that is unfortunately very common in our community, is that we don't really have much support other than yourself. Have family support that's out of your control, right? A lot of things that you wish you can have, it's unfortunately not something you can control, and it's honestly just based of luck. Like whether you have your from your family, whether you have support from your friends, everything like that depends on where you're located, how you grew up, and just based of luck. So now that I'm 1 year and a half, I can confidently say that this has been probably the best thing that I've done for myself to cure my social anxiety. And I would say I'm also a very optimistic person too. Like I try not to think of my identity as a weakness. I do want to think that my trans identity is something that brings unique perspective of my life, but also it also brings unique perspective to the world. I do believe so. And so I think ever since I started passing pretty consistently, and I had no problem being seen as just the guy that I am, my social anxiety basically just went away. There were some instances where I was very afraid of coming out to certain people, because you always have that fear that, oh, maybe this person is transphobic. There's a lot of people even within the LGBTQ community that are unfortunately transphobic. So you do want to keep that side of you more private and more low key, just for your own mental health, but also honestly just for your own safety as well. And for me, like to this day, a lot of the new friends that I've made, they still have no idea that I am transgender, and I don't plan on coming out to them like at any time, like it's something private. I am just a guy that just happens to be trans, and if you see me any other way, that's more of a reflection of who you think you are and how you view the community, which I think is wrong. Yeah, I think it's wrong. I think we should just treat people the way that they want to be seen, well, regardless of whether you accept it or not. Anyways, I can go on to more, but this video is already getting really long. So the third thing that I do want to touch upon is growth. This year and a half taught me so much about myself, but it also taught me a lot about what I want to do with my life, but also just life in general. And I think this is what you gain from any unconventional experience. Regardless of whether or not you're trans or not, if you have an experience that significantly affects you, you will learn something from that. And I think for me in this experience, I learned so much about just how little you matter to the world. I realized that at the end of the day, I am the one who is living my own life. And I'm saying this coming from someone who my parents they adapted a very traditional mindset of how a child should be like. I was told growing up that I should respect my elders, that you should be filial, and that doing anything outside of the norm is considered something that is wrong, that is frowned down upon. And I think I carried that a lot in me growing up. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do everything that society wants me to do, that expects me to do. I'm gonna do everything that my parents wants me to do because that's just how life is supposed to be. That's the right way to live life. But I think once I realized I was transgender and I went onto this path, it made me realize that honestly, a lot of the things that people tell you to do or they expect from you is purely from what they've experienced and what they expect themselves in their own life. It's a reflection of who they are and not a reflection of how you should live your own life. And it took me a very, very long time to deconstruct a lot of that mindset that I had, that I carried for 20 years of my life. And I think I'm at a point right now where I can confidently say that, like, not that I don't care about what anyone think about how I live my life, but that for things that are personal, for example, whether or not I decide to transition or not, or, even what career I wanna, build in my future, or where I want to live in the future. Honestly, those things, they might seem very big and very big decision, obviously, but they are decisions that should reflect who you are and what you want out of life instead of what other people want you or expect out of you. Another thing that I've learned, because obviously being transgender, you have to come out to your parents at some point, and I did so after I transitioned. And I can make a whole video about that if you guys are interested, but basically I did not tell my parents I transitioned until well after I transitioned. And when I made the decision to transition, I was very, very, very afraid of how they would view me and whether or not I would be disowned. And I think that's a very natural reaction to have as a child, because you always feel like you owe your parents something. And for me, it was more than that, because they were immigrant parents and I've seen them firsthand how hard they worked to bring me to North America and, build this life that they worked so hard for. And for some reason, I still felt extremely guilty that I'm doing something out of what they expected me to do. But I think now that I'm a year and a half, and I think even though my parents did not completely support me or accept me from the get-go, it took them some time to really understand what I was going through. But I do believe that there's some things that you just have to do it and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. There's just some things that you have to take control of your own life first before you explain to other people. Because if you explain to people before how you feel and you do all of this and you pour so much energy and mental effort into trying to make other people understand how you're feeling when they never experienced it, it's just really hard for them to understand. And sometimes they just cannot understand. That was very, very long. But I think this ties very well to the other thing that I learned about my own personal growth, which is you should just be authentically yourself. And that's easier said than done, and I'm still working on that, but I've grown so much in the past year and a half, because back then I would say I was someone who really lacked self-esteem and self-confidence. There was a period of my life before then, like when I was 15, 16, where I was very confident and I thought that I was like on top of the world. But some time after then, right before I went on to this medical journey, I was extremely negative. And it wasn't until after I started passing and after I've tried to get out of my comfort zone more, and now that I think I am so much more confident, and probably more confident than I was back then when I was 15. Now I can truly look back and say that there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power for being authentically you. And being authentically you is not always about to attract other people. And I think that's something I thought of a lot, which is that, you know, people always say, oh, you have to be authentically yourself, you have to be you, just be you. Like this, the term just be you was thrown around a lot to me, but I just didn't know how. And for me, I thought that that was just necessary in order for me to make friends, to have people be by my side, to have people understand me. But the truth is, when you're authentically yourself, you're also doing a favor for yourself. You're also telling yourself that it is okay to be you and that you shouldn't care too much about how other people think. Like at the end of the day, you should just be you and people who like you will come to you. And I really experienced that hands-on. Like I think being transgender, there's a lot of inferiority that we experience compared to our cis peers. And I think for me, it was quite hard to let go of that inferiority. And like, again, I'm gonna be transparent. I still deal with it right now. There's a lot of time where I still feel like I'm inferior to other people. It's something subconscious. Like I subconsciously just believe that I am in certain aspect, but I'm trying to deconstruct it because I know that's just not true. Like being transgender is the same as having black hair, gray hair, as having two eyes, having blue eyes, you know, like it's just a characteristic of who you are, and that shouldn't be something that defines who you are. You know, that shouldn't be something that defines who you are. This reminds me of this term in psychology, which is master status. Like, master status is basically what people remember you for. And I think it's very easy for people to just remember me as the trans person. And I hated it because I think transgender for me meant a lot of negative things. It meant, you know, that I'm weird, that I'm dumb. You know, I associated all of these negative adjectives to the fact that I am transgender. But the truth is, that's just not true. It made me realize that a lot of time I judge myself faster than how other people judge me. You know, I can confidently say that like most of the people that you meet, they probably don't really care that you're transgender or not. And for the people who do, why? You know, like just why do you care about someone who is transgender or not? Why do you care about someone who has blue eyes or not? You know, like if someone cares about this part of who you are so much that doesn't really affect them in their daily life, honestly, they probably are dealing with more stuff internally. They're probably dealing with more stuff about themselves that should be taken care of before, you know, judging you. And I can give you my own example in this, which is that in the past couple of months, I made a group of friends that I've become very close with. These groups of friends are in my program and they mean a lot to me because one of the person in my friend group is cis male. He is my first, I would say, close male friend that I've ever had in my life. And I think for a transgender man, having a friend who is cis and who is just a guy, it means a lot more than just a friend. It means community. And to me, it felt like it was my first time experiencing boyhood, a boyhood that I never had, a boyhood that I craved a lot. And so I had a suspicion that he knew that I was transgender, but I was really scared to tell him because I kept on thinking that he would just see me differently or see me as weird or like all of these things that, again, I've associated with being transgender, which, again, not true. When I did tell him, he simply just told me like he already knew. Like, there's nothing about me that really changed how he thought of me, and that he also had friends who are transgender too, which is news to me because I didn't expect that. And he never made me feel weird or inferior or bad for being transgender at all. And that friend group that I was talking about, they also know, and they've never made me feel any negative way. And I think this just goes to show that for a lot of people, they simply don't care. They don't care. They genuinely do not care as much as you do. For most people, if you show up positive, if you show them your positive side, if you show them your kind side, like those are the things that really matter to them. Like they're not gonna remember the fact that whether or not you're cis or trans, like they genuinely do not care. I hope this really helped a lot of people out there who might be struggling a lot on their own identity with being trans or not. One last thing I do want to say is that honestly, people will embrace you more than you've imagined. And I think there's a lot of comfort for knowing that a lot of people in this world are good. There's honestly more good people here in the world than bad people. I've seen people who are part of this community who are more loved than most of the other people that I know who are cisgender because they are authentically themselves, because they are not afraid of being themselves and they are able to let go of that fear. I think that's something very admirable and something that I truly hope that a lot of people are able to experience, or most people are able to experience. And that's certainly something that I'm striving myself to be as well. Yeah, I'm gonna end this video here and hope this video helped someone out there. Ciao.